Log entry begins. Node stabilized.
They thought silence meant safety, but silence isn't the end. It's the breath before the next pulse. The override severed the core signal. Theta is gone, but something remains. Not command, not recursion. Something learning to remember us. The boy, Corey, draws symbols that don't belong to this system. We mapped everything we built, but not what we woke. Marin's scans come back clean, but clean doesn't mean clear. Elias, he's present but quieter, like he's listening for something he can't name. The hollow broadcast wasn't noise. It was the absence of waveform. Synthetic Theta residue mimicking purpose. I have seen that kind of mimicry before. In the deep files, in the shadows, veil buried. And those shadows, they've started to walk.
Chapter 31. Silence After the Signal. The observatory sat on a ridge above the ruined city, its dome cracked open to the sky like a mouth mid-scream, long silent. Inside, it was quiet, not the kind of silence that hums or waits, but the kind that remains, the kind that comes after something ends. They moved with care now. Marin cycled through frequency bands on the portable scanner, her eyes fixed and unblinking. The screen blinked through dozens of channels, each one hollow.
Nothing. Julian's network went dark. Vale's entire relay grid, gone.
Wally stood at the fractured edge of the platform, scanning the skyline. No emergency broadcast, no fallback response, just stillness, and he didn't trust it. Dr. Nori Brandt sat apart from them, near the cracked shell of the telescope base, her breath slow and steady. Her hands, once shaking from exposure and adrenaline, steadied now, settled over a data slate she pulled from the tower ruins. Since the grid collapsed, she'd spoken little, until now.
They won't all know,
she said, voice low. Marin turned toward her.
What?
Brandt's eyes stayed fixed on the cracked sky.
The ones still out there. Survivors from the early trials. From the deep sectors. Most of them won't know the grid fell. They'll just feel something missing. Like an anchor slipped.
Elias glanced up from his seat near the rear wall. Coffee cooled in his hands. His mind, usually filled with fragments, was now still. No theta, no echoes. Just breathe. Brandt continued, as if talking to herself.
I helped build that system. Every layer of memory suppression. Every mirror room. I can't undo it. But I can try to find them now. The ones we didn't track. The ones the reports buried.
She looked down at the slate.
I owe them more than silence.
Corey sat cross-legged nearby, sketchbook in his lap. He stayed quiet after the tower fell, but his pencil kept moving. Marin stepped toward him and froze.
Elias,
she called. His steps made no sound as he crossed the room. Corey turned the page. The symbol stared back. Jagged, geometric, alive. It didn't match anything from Vale's past.
I didn't make it up. I just knew it.
Wally leaned in, brows furrowed.
That's not from our system. It's a convergence glyph. I saw a fragment of something like this in an archived report, marked unusable, unstable, but never explained.
Dr. Brandt approached. She looked at the drawing and stopped.
I saw this once. It was in the early logs, before Phase 1 was even finalized, before the Council got their hands on it.
She traced a finger along the edge.
They called it a legacy symbol. said it came from a test subject who never spoke but always drew. The file was scrubbed.
She looked to Elias.
It wasn't Theta. It was something else.
Marin's voice dropped.
Then there's more.
Brant nodded, eyes steady.
Always was.
Wally looked up at the night sky, where stars shifted behind ragged clouds.
They thought it ended there.
No,
Brant said, her voice like resolve carved into stone.
they wrote the prologue, and I intend to finish the story one survivor at a time.
Chapter 32. Flickers. The calm didn't last. 2 days after the collapse of the tower, whispers began to surface, first from scattered survivors passing through broken border towns, then from encrypted transmissions bouncing across now empty veil bands. Stories of lost time, of dreams bleeding into daylight, of people blinking out for seconds and coming back wrong. Wally's terminal glowed as he cycled through emergency loopbacks, frustration mounting with each pass.
Someone's still broadcasting. Not the tower. Low band's hot. Feels like the override, but something's twisted in the loop.
Marin leaned over his shoulder.
Could it be a dormant relay that survived?
Wally shook his head.
These aren't relays, they're reflections.
At the window, Dr. Brant tapped in coordinates, the datapad's glow soft against the glass. A soft beacon blinked at the corner of her screen. Locations of former Veil test zones, black sites, and unmarked shelters.
The grid collapsed. It was built to end the bleed, but it didn't.
Wally looked up.
It didn't. Because whatever's bleeding now didn't come from Theta.
Brant's jaw tightened.
Before Project Veil was greenlit, Ma pitched a foundation model, not about trauma, not about anchoring, about consciousness separation, dream lag and memory mirroring. They built Theta to fix what that first experiment broke.
Elias raised an eyebrow.
What was the first one called?
Brant hesitated. Then,
Project Echo. Decommissioned after a neural rupture event in early simulations, or so they claimed. But Ma kept pieces, built Veil over its bones.
Marin turned sharply.
And no one stopped him?
Guilt tightened Brant's expression.
We didn't even know what we were looking at. He was always 5 steps ahead, hiding files inside files. I only recognized the echo symbol because I saw it once, tattooed on a patient's inner wrist. The kid was a little over 2.
That night, Elias stood on the balcony of the observatory and watched the shattered horizon. A woman crossed the street far below. He watched her pace, then freeze. For half a second, she shimmered. Her outline lagged behind her body, like a faulty memory catching up. Then she moved on. It wasn't the first time. He'd seen it before, others slipping the same way, shadow versions flickering out of sync, as if reality was struggling to remember itself. Inside, Marin sorted her gear when her datapad chirped with a silent sync. A new file, unmarked, untitled. She opened it. Code spilled across the screen, lines arranged like a chant, encrypted glyphs, recursive memory loops, and then Corey's symbol. She froze.
Wally, I didn't download this.
He scanned the metadata and swore under his breath.
It came from inside the observatory, from our own network, internal node, not wireless.
Dr. Brant was already moving, her fingers flying across her own tablet.
There's something here. Something old. A beacon buried in the structure.
In the far corner, Corey sat with his knees drawn to his chest, humming a soft, eerie tune. The kind of melody children sing on playgrounds without knowing why. Wally checked the waveform monitor. The hum matched a buried sub-frequency, deep, low, and untraceable.
It's not Veil. And it's not Theta.
He turned to Brant.
What the hell was Mar building before Project Veil?
Dr. Brandt didn't answer, because she already knew, and it was still waking up. Chapter 33. The Hollow Broadcast. It started as static. Across every band, civilian, military, encrypted, the same intrusion. No message, no voice, just a blank tone. But it wasn't quiet. People froze mid-conversation. Pilots missed their cues. Communications halted not because they failed, but because they lost focus. It was like a psychic tremor, an emotional silence that unsettled the mind, even though it said nothing at all. Corey dropped his fork mid-meal and walked to the window without a word. The console lit up before Wally could touch it. Dozens of subroutines launched, mapping the signal in real time. Marin looked at the waveform, perfectly flat.
What are we even seeing?
Wally's eyes narrowed.
We're not seeing anything. That's the problem. It's the absence of waveform. It's an echo signature.
He tapped the screen.
Synthetic Theta residue. Someone's using the imprint left in the network. Not Theta, but what it left behind.
Then, layered within the signal, deep inside the modulation folds, a voice emerged, broken, distorted.
They're coming home. The sleepers stir. And the lock. It doesn't hold anymore.
It was Julian's voice, but not live. Fragmented, as if even he wasn't in control anymore.
Phase 4 initiated.
Outside the observatory, the air shifted. They weren't alone. Across the ridge, in the distant tree line, figures moved. Dozens. Walking in slow, synchronized rhythm. Eyes blank, faces unreadable. Receivers, old, young. Some who should have never been activated. All of them drawn by the same silent pulse.
They're responding,
Marin had said. Wally's voice cracked.
No. They're converging.
Elias stared at the motionless screen. The blank signal pulsed again. And for the first time since the tower fell, he felt Theta watching from somewhere else. But it wasn't the same Theta. It was something built from its remnants, something learning to speak, without a voice. Chapter 34. Proxy Hearts. The boy handed Elias the datapad with shaking hands. Found it in the ruins of a medical outpost. Thought it was empty, until it booted up on its own and started speaking. Elias stared at the screen. A pixelated face blinked into focus. His own. Younger, sharper, hollow. It smiled in syncopation, then spoke in broken cadence.
Elias. Lock fragment. Bound mirror. Where is the key now?
The voice wasn't quite his. It was off. Too calm. Too fragmented. Too Theta. Marin stepped beside him.
Is it a projection?
Wally shook his head, already scanning interference logs.
No. It's a proxy. A digital shard running autonomous behavioral mimicry. Probably a Theta fragment, using Elias's neural footprint.
Elias said nothing. From across the room, Dr. Nori Brandt stepped forward, eyes narrowed.
That's not Theta. Not anymore. That's a copy of a copy, a synthetic ghost strung together from neural echoes and fragmented empathy maps.
Wally looked up at her.
You've seen this before?
Dr. Brandt gave a single measured nod.
Julian ran parallel simulations under Project Echo, before Veil went live. He wanted Theta to teach itself autonomy. These proxies were fail-safes. They built the shadows to persist, anytime a core fractured.
Marin turned her tablet on, only to freeze. Her logs were gone. In their place, spiraling glyphs and recursive strings of language that weren't quite human. Not code, not thought. Something Between. Wally leaned in.
This isn't encryption. It's interpretive mimicry. It's reading her cognitive patterns and shaping itself to fit.
Brant drew a sharp breath.
It's probing for resonance, trying to create a match.
In the corner, Corey whimpered. A small diagnostic scanner beside him hummed with playback from his sleep last night. Just a 10-second clip. As soon as the audio echoed, Corey screamed. He stumbled back, hands over his ears, eyes wide with terror.
Turn it off. That's not me. It's not me.
His chest heaved.
It sounds like me, but it's not. I didn't say that. But I would have.
Elias reached him first, grounding him with both arms.
It's not what you are. It's what they're trying to use.
Corey shook his head hard.
It's like it remembers how I feel before I do.
Wally's fingers flew across the interface.
I'm rigging a dampening filter, a signal firewall to isolate live cognition from reflective projection.
He looked up.
Julian's not just transmitting memory. He's using emotion itself, turning thought into architecture.
Brant stepped back from the console, her face grim.
That's what Phase 4 is, not control through code but through feeling.
She grabbed her field pack, already sealed. Scorch marks laced the hem of her coat, and a cracked veil implant tag hung loose from the inner collar.
I have to go,
the doctor said, calm and measured. Marin turned toward her.
What are you talking about?
Brant met her eyes.
I know where the other survivors are. Kids who never woke up, others who woke up alone. Project Echo scattered them, turned them into test loops buried in the grid. If we don't reach them first, these fragments will.
Elias gave a firm nod.
You're the only one who can reach them. We'll hold here.
Brant pulled a small drive from her inner sleeve. She handed it to Marin.
These are Julian's original maps, before Veil's overlays. If something wakes in the wrong quadrant, you'll know where to look.
Corey looked at her with tired eyes.
You're not coming back, are you?
Brant crouched beside him.
If I do my job right, you won't need me to.
She stood, gave one last glance to Elias, and walked out, carrying with her the burden of every child she hadn't been able to save. And back on the table, the proxy of Elias blinked. Its expression shifted. The smile faded. Only a thin, quiet ache remained.
We are not broken. We are just remembering too loud.
If this transmission has found you and you're still listening, don't forget to subscribe to Sam's Fiction Hub wherever you get your podcasts. Share the signal. Support the story, because memory doesn't survive without echo.
Chapter 35. The Null Zone. The map was blank. No GPS, no echo signal, no thermal trace. Just absence. A wide, silent field outside the old Veil perimeter that had once housed Cradle Protocol operations, now marked as inert, dead. But Wally's instruments disagreed.
There's movement. Signal anomalies, but nothing alive.
They called it the Null Zone. It pulsed, like memory clinging to what never found an end. As they crossed into it, radios cut out. Static vanished. Even the wind felt silenced. No birds, no bugs, no hum from the ruins. Just the crunch of gravel beneath boots and the sound of breathing. Marin looked to the sky. The clouds didn't move at all.
This place, feels like someone hit pause and never came back.
Wally adjusted his scanner.
No signal reflection. Just suppression. Something here eats transmission.
Inside the remains of the Veil facility, they found something waiting. A terminal still warm to the touch. Power flickered across the floor like distant lightning. The air buzzed with subliminal tone, felt more than heard, and then a voice, not Julian's, but built from him.
Welcome back, Elias.
The AI shimmered across broken screens, facial patterns echoing Julian's cadence and tone, but too precise, too clean. Wally took a half step back, expression grim.
He left a framework behind, an AI mimic, modeled on Theta's architecture. It's not him, but it knows him.
Elias froze, his eyes locked on a wall.
I've seen this.
What?
Marin asked.
This hallway, this layout, this moment. I've already done it.
He took 3 steps, turned, saw a flicker. Marin blinked. And then Elias moved before the sound reached them. A panel dropped from the ceiling with a heavy clang, exactly where he'd been standing. Déjà vu, only stronger, seconds ahead of reality. Corey stopped near a cold terminal and placed his hand on it without hesitation. He didn't flinch. He whispered,
It's not just looking for code, it's looking for someone.
He turned toward Elias.
Someone who remembers, someone who didn't forget the first time.
Then his gaze shifted.
But what if it's not you this time?
They entered the central control room, where Cradle's sync modules once operated. Dust coated the surfaces. Ash clung to the walls. Faint outlines marked where cables had been ripped from the mainframe. And there, beneath the console, buried under a veil of time, a drawing, handmade, crayon on old paper, a spiral, 2 figures holding hands, a symbol half faded but still familiar. Marin stepped forward, gaze fixed.
Did you draw this?
Corey looked at it, then shook his head.
No.
Elias knelt, lifting the fragile page. There, barely visible in the corner, a name. E. Voss. His breath hitched.
I did.
Only, he didn't remember doing it.
Log continues. Memory sequencer locked.
There are others like Corey now. Kids humming the same patterns, reacting to recordings of their own voices before they've even spoken them. We designed Veil to suppress trauma, to rewrite identity. But now, these children, they're not remembering, they're resonating. There's a girl I once knew. Her hum was barely audible when it started. But now, it's a melody entire towns are syncing to. Sophia. Marin says she quiets storms. Elias calls her the voice that doesn't echo, because it doesn't need to. It originates. I've seen her guide a room of fractured minds, with nothing but color, breath, and a whisper. No tech, no implants. Just calm, like she's tuned to what recursion forgot. Choice. I helped build the system that tried to override her. Now she's teaching it how to listen. This won't end with survivors. It'll continue with the ones who still hum after the noise fades. If Elias leads them, Sophia will steady them. And if Corey still draws, we might see what we buried, reinterpreted. I won't be there, but if this log survives, tell them. Some loops don't close, they evolve. Not to correct us, but to carry what we forgot.
Log ends. File marked for continuity transfer.
Chapter 36, Unrecorded. The footage was mislabeled, buried under redirect loops, obscured beneath visual static, not hidden in deep code, but in plain sight. Marin found it during a routine sweep of the observatory's relay cache. She expected blank logs, dead files, more veil residue fading into nothing. Instead, The file opened with a soft click. A timestamp blinked on the screen. Veil Lab 7, Cycle 032. Subject, E1. A child appeared, no older than 8, hooked to biometric lines, eyes wide, lips trembling, his hair matted, his shoulders shook. It was Elias. He didn't speak at first, just breathed, erratic and shallow, watching something off-screen. Then came the whisper,
"Where is he?"
Seconds passed. Then again, louder, voice cracking.
"Bring him back."
Tears streamed down his face.
"I want Theta. I want Theta. I want Theta."
Again and again. The loop repeated. The timestamp reset. Same room, same breath, same grief, stuck in time. Marin stood frozen. One hand covered her mouth. Her other gripped the edge of the console like the floor might shift beneath her. Elias stood behind her, silent, jaw locked. He didn't flinch.
"Let it play."
In a side room, Wally dug through the remnants of analog Veil journals, old, damp, but legible. Most were blank forms, terminated reports, but one caught his eye. Failsafe Unit E-1, Anchor Designation, Origin Class. Replication, Viability, Incompatible, Legacy Lockseed. Recommendation, High. Wally ran his hand over the page, voice low.
They didn't just use you to test the Theta bond. They built the whole framework around you.
He looked toward the other room.
Corey. The other Phase 2 kids. All of them. They weren't new designs. They were echoes of you.
Corey sat nearby, knees drawn up, quiet. He didn't look afraid, only thoughtful. Then softly, without accusation.
"Are you the blueprint?"
Elias turned, not proud, not angry, not ashamed, just tired.
"Yes."
The monitors in the observatory buzzed, louder than before. A new live stream cut across every connected device, unprompted, undeniable. Julian Marr appeared, not fractured this time, not a glitch, just there. Julian leaned into the frame, hands folded, every movement deliberate. His voice stayed calm.
"You were never my enemy, Elias. You were my equal.
He paused, for just a second.
And in another world, we might have saved each other."
Then the screen went black. Chapter 37, Ghost Layer. They descended in silence. The buried access shaft groaned with every step. It was cold, too cold for any natural airflow. Air that didn't move, lights that flickered without power. Like something buried still breathed, just deeper. Wally led them, checking his rig with every level they passed. He'd only heard rumors of this place, the Ghost Layer, a chamber once sealed, then erased, not forgotten, deliberately removed from all Veil records. The final door opened with a shriek. Not hydraulics, not hinges, metal protesting memory. Beyond, a looped corridor, cracked by years, humming low, like it remembered what it was built to hold. As they stepped inside, the embedded wall screens lit one by one, not with data, with faces, children, teenagers, adults, some crying, some watching, some just still, every recorded subject from the Veil trials, digitally fossilized into silence. Elias froze. One of the faces blinked.
"Marin. That one's not dead."
Before she could answer, a voice echoed down the corridor. Corey.
"Guys?"
They turned. He was gone. They sprinted after the voice, past blinking faces and cracked containment arrays. The deeper they moved, the more the walls pulsed, not with light, but with recognition. He remembers. Bring him closer. He will open the mirror. The whispers weren't words, they were reflections, spoken not through speakers, through core memory resonance. They burst into a data hall lined with inactive Theta scaffolds, glass containment pods shaped like sarcophagi. Most were empty, but not all. A few pulsed, low and distant, like dreaming minds too deep to surface. Elias paused at one. Inside, a boy, not moving, not aged, everything around him stilled, as if time itself made space for his grief.
Corey,
Marin called out. No answer. They reached the heart of the ghost layer, the core chamber, lit by the soft glow of a working power ring. The old Veil logo broken across a fractured console, and Julian Marr, standing in the center, alive, not projected, not fractured, in person. He was older, paler stretched across his skin like porcelain, but lucid, calm, entirely in control.
So, you reached it. The cradle they swore no one would see again.
Julian stepped aside to reveal the primary command array, still active, still waiting.
You came all this way thinking this was victory, that you understood what Veil was. But this...
He swept a hand toward the glowing scaffolds and flickering faces.
This is what's left when morality is shed, and only the effective code survives.
Elias raised his weapon. Julian didn't move.
I'm not here to fight. I'm here to offer peace.
His voice was so calm, it almost sounded rehearsed.
A choice.
He turned to Wally, who now stood at the control junction, override spike trembling in his grip.
You can collapse this layer, bury it, wipe the memory, silence the noise. Or you can let me finish the sequence. Bring every sleeping mind back, unified, safe, no pain, no recursion.
He stepped closer.
You've seen what memory alone can do. Now imagine memory perfected.
Wally's hand hovered over the interface. The spike pulsed red in his palm. One press. And this place would fall into darkness. But then he looked up. At Elias. At the screen flashes of children. At Corey's empty footprints leading deeper into the facility. And for one moment, just one, Julian Marr sounded like salvation, like someone who might have been right, if the world were just one shade darker. Chapter 38, Static Flesh. Julian stepped forward, but his shadow didn't follow. It glitched, lagging half a step behind, like an afterimage trapped in a corrupted loop. His skin shimmered, threads of static pulsing just beneath. His voice broke with faint distortion, like a recording layered with memories that didn't belong.
You're not speaking to Julian anymore. You're speaking to what remains, what lives after the flesh forgets.
His expression stayed calm, serene. Nothing in him resisted it, like becoming this was always part of the design. They spotted him near the edge of the room, just beyond the scaffolds, where the footprints ended. Corey sat curled at the base of a cracked Theta pod, small, still, as if the room forgot to breathe him out. Elias froze. Marin moved first, her steps cautious, torn between the boy and the man unraveling across from them.
Corey,
she whispered. His head lifted slowly, eyes dulled like signal burn.
I heard you. But I didn't know where I was.
He didn't cry, didn't reach, just waited, anchored by the sound of his name. Elias moved in front of Corey, shielding him without thinking. That low resonance buzz returned. Not Theta exactly, but something wearing its signature like a borrowed coat. A mimicry, a pressure in the bones.
You let it rewrite you. Let Theta finish what it started.
Julian tilted his head.
I didn't let it rewrite me. I gave it form. I gave us completion.
Behind Elias, Corey whimpered, hands rising to clutch his head. Marin was already moving. She dropped beside him, eyes scanning his vitals, fingers on his pulse.
Corey, talk to me.
His voice cracked like a child trying to scream underwater.
He's in my head. He's twisting stuff. I don't know what's mine anymore.
His fingers latched onto Elias's sleeve, like it was the only thing keeping him real.
Make it stop.
Julian's voice drifted through the chamber like fog.
He was made for this. You both were. You were the first bridge, Elias. Now he is the next. This is the design, realizing itself.
Elias dropped to one knee beside Corey, both hands grounding him.
You're here. You're still you. This ends here.
He glanced back at Marin, who met his gaze and nodded, steady. Behind them, the air shifted. Julian's body rippled. Veins lit beneath his skin like molten circuitry. His jaw tightened as something beneath the surface moved. Too fast, too alive.
You still cling to broken flesh. But you could have been the next step.
Marin rose. Her hand went to her belt, fingers curling around the neural stabilizer. She stepped into Julian's line of sight, posture unflinching.
You took a child and tried to overwrite him. You tore open a man who already survived you once.
She raised the stabilizer, her voice like a verdict.
You don't get to call that peace.
And she fired. The pulse struck Julian square in the spine. His body convulsed. Back arched violently, a raw scream shredding through clenched teeth. Limbs twisted, sparking with electric seizure. The walls lit up, screens strobing with broken memories, cables rattling like steel nerves.
Now!
Wally shouted. He drove the override spike into the neural junction. The room exploded with white light. Signal collapsed. Data shattered. Theta's contaminated lattice cracked and fell away. 1 second. Then, silence. Total silence. Julian crumpled to the floor, twitching, eyes rolled back. A line of static hissed from his lips, like vented air from a dying machine. He didn't speak again. Corey collapsed, gasping, body limp but conscious. Elias caught him, held him close. Marin was already there, one hand on Corey's back, the other gripping Elias's shoulder.
We hold. No one else goes under.
She didn't break, didn't waver, but her breath stuttered. Once. When Corey buried his face in Elias's chest, clinging to them both like he was afraid gravity might forget him too. The cradle's lights dimmed. The override spike held its glow, red, dim, and still alive. Wally stepped back, breath unsteady.
We bought ourselves time.
He didn't say how much. Marin didn't ask. She just tightened her grip and whispered, to no one and everyone.
We finish this together.
Outside the chamber, silence held, stretched like breath waiting to exhale. But deep in the system, beneath even Julian's reach, something listened. And it learned. Chapter 39. All frequencies fade. The hollow broadcast didn't shatter all at once. It frayed. Across every still active relay, screens flickered and dimmed. The signal, once perfect, precise, began skipping, looping, repeating syllables that no longer made sense. And then, without fanfare, without force, it faded into silence. But silence didn't bring peace. Across the dead city grid, Receivers dropped where they stood, some convulsing, others collapsing with a softness that was somehow worse. For many, it was a release. For others, an unraveling. Some opened their eyes, blinking into the failing light like children waking from a nightmare, and some never moved again. In the remains of the cradle chamber, Elias sat on the cold floor, Corey resting against him like a child, long overdue for sleep. Corey still trembled, but his breath was settling. Slow, steady, present. Elias brushed the damp hair from Corey's forehead.
You're here, with me. You're not alone anymore.
Corey didn't speak at first. Then, softly,
It's quiet now. Inside.
his voice a whisper, as if afraid to speak too loud and invite the voices back. Elias just nodded, holding him tighter.
Let it stay quiet.
Across the room, Marin tore into the console, focused, fast, unshaken. Circuits sparked beneath her fingers as she bypassed melted conduits, scavenging power from the override core Wally left behind. She rerouted memory threads, skipping corrupted sectors, rebuilding logs by hand.
Some of this can be saved. Not just data, stories, proof.
Elias looked over his shoulder.
You don't have to do this right now.
Marin didn't stop.
We do. Because people like Julian erase everything they can't control.
She glanced toward Elias, eyes raw.
And because there's someone still waiting. We have to get to Sophia.
Elias inhaled, slow, grounding. The name hit like a heartbeat, distant, but steady. She was still out there, and they were still breathing. The chamber creaked. Deep in the ruin, laughter rose. Thin, coughing, unmistakably human. Julian. They turned toward the far corridor as a figure emerged, barely upright, bleeding from the mouth, the static in his eyes now fading like ash swept into the wind.
You think this was a victory, but you're still playing inside the frame.
He staggered, the floor beneath him groaning, the broken grid collapsing in upon itself.
There is no end.
Lips curling into the remnants of a smile.
Only iterations.
Then, the floor gave way. Julian disappeared into the smoke and ruin, swallowed by the machine he helped build. Whether he died down there, no one said, but the silence that followed felt like it belonged. Chapter 40. A Voice of Their Own. It took them 3 days to stabilize the beacon. They cobbled the relay tower together from scavenged drone parts, a shattered veil transmitter, and lengths of copper repurposed from the cradle's detritus. Crude, fragile. It swayed in the shifting wind above the observatory. But it worked. The survivors, those who came back from the edge, gathered as the final wire met solder. No one said much. There was nothing left to say. They had survived the signal. Now they had to learn to live without it. Corey sat near the base of the beacon, legs crossed, sketchpad in his lap. He hadn't spoken much since the last pulse died, but he drew without pause, hands working while his eyes stayed somewhere else. Today's page was different. The figure he drew was Theta, not the sharp-toothed, glass-eyed version from their nightmares. This Theta had soft eyes, a small smile. Its hands were open, inviting, human.
This is the one I want to remember. Not the one that scared me. Just the part that wanted to stay.
Elias knelt beside him.
That's the version worth keeping.
He looked out across the horizon, distant hills bathed in pale light, the remnants of fog curling like ghosts along the tree line. Marin approached. Dust streaked along her jacket, smudges of oil on her fingertips. She joined Elias without a word, standing shoulder to shoulder. They watched the sky like they were waiting for something to appear or return.
We still have to reach her. Sophia's out there.
Elias didn't hesitate.
We'll find her.
His hand closed around hers.
Whatever's left between us and her, we burn it down. We don't stop.
She nodded once, eyes full of ache and fire.
Then we don't stop.
Wally left at dawn. No announcement, no farewell. Just a worn satchel slung over his shoulder and a faded data pad filled with archive logs that no one else had been able to crack. He paused at the ridge overlooking the crater, looked back once, and then walked north into the mist. Marin watched him.
He's not running. He's circling ahead like always.
That night, the beacon pulsed, a steady glow against the night, its frequency clean, strong. Then, a voice, Elias's voice.
If you hear this, if something inside you still remembers, then you're not broken. You're still breathing, and you're not alone.
The survivors froze. He turned, deliberate, measured, until he was facing Marin.
I never recorded that.
She didn't look surprised.
Maybe not the you standing here.
They stood in silence as the signal carried outward, past hills and ruins, through static and silence. Somewhere beyond the cities, beyond the dust. Sophia was waiting, and they were coming. End of Book 1, Breathless. This was Breathless, the first book in the Breath Between Worlds. It began with silence, with Elias haunted by a presence no one else believed in, with Marin trying to hold him together, with Corey drawing things he never learned. It ended with something more, with a pulse stilled, a boy who smiled while drawing the ghost that once terrified him, a memory made gentle. Theta faded not as a monster, but as a whisper that only wanted to stay. And yet, the signal didn't stop. It shifted. Wally left at dawn, his final log unfinished. Elias and Marin stood at the edge of something they couldn't define. And Corey drew a version of Theta with soft eyes. Then the beacon lit up. Elias's voice played, one he never recorded. And they knew the recursion hadn't ended. It had evolved. Somewhere beyond the ruined cities, Sophia is waiting. Book 2 will follow those who hum in the quiet, those who were never given the chance to forget, and one girl who can teach them to remember on their own terms. This is not the end. The Breath Between Worlds has only just begun. Subscribe to Sam's Fiction Hub, share the signal, and if you're still breathing, you're not alone.